Is joining me in the studio tonight. Thanks very much for being here.
My pleasure, Liz.
I should say Marist is home to our illustrious intern, Brian. We miss him terribly.
We have many interns, and we will continue to send them your way.
I hope you do, because he was fantastic.
Well, he's actually interviewing for us now, I think.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he came down, he said he had interned here, and now he's doing the polling.
And he doesn't give me any heads up in the polls, which is really unfortunate.
Very appropriate. Signs that confidentiality agreement.
He's a good kid.
Yes,
so, okay, you actually end up being the tiebreaker, the pollster extraordinaire. You come in at the end of the week, and what you found actually is in the middle of Quinnipiac 6 points and Siena 33. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, there's an easy explanation, which is easy for pundits and pollsters and probably of little concern to voters around the state, but there are very different methods being used here.
Right.
The numbers suggest a precision that may go beyond the science of it all and miss some of the art side. So the Siena poll had 33 points spread between Cuomo and Palladino. They were looking at registered voters. The Quinnipiac poll looked at likely voters, but didn't include Rick Lazio in it. So in these numbers here, which have Andrew Cuomo ahead by 19 percentage points, 52 to 33, that 19 points is based on likely voters and also 9 percentage points for Rick Lazio on the conservative line. So we did a little bit of both, and we think this is the way, obviously we feel this is the way we should have proceeded.
Interestingly, you also call this the Lazio factor, and I find I'm curious about this. You get 9% for Lazio. If, in fact, he was not there, not all that 9% necessarily would be going for Carl Palladino or Andrew Cuomo. Do you think that they would end up, you just don't know, would they end up in undecided?
You don't know. Eventually, the likelihood is they probably find the Republican, because that's more at home. Right now, they just got through a primary fight, and some of the Lazio people and some of the Palladino people aren't all that in love with each other. We're talking about 5 weeks down to Election Day. If Lazio wasn't in it, well, Cuomo's getting about 1 in 5 Republicans. Lazio's strength is clearly with Republicans. The likelihood is they would find Palladino in the end.
Well, so, Republicans, though, who of a more moderate nature. I mean, what we're really seeing is the continuation of a battle that we saw in New York 23, the continuation of a battle that we've been seeing for some time, which is a struggle for the heart and mind of the Republican Party.
This is a national battle right now, and the Tea Party movement, which is alive and well in New York, not in the numbers that it is nationwide, but in New York we see 28% identify with the Tea Party movement. Nationwide, our polls show about a third of the electorate. Not surprisingly, in New York, not as heavy, but that's a big factor in terms of branding what the Republican Party is all about right now in New York.
Also another thing that you did was, which I thought was funny, because you played it a little bit safe by polling registered and leaners and likelies, just in case. Just in case.
But it all starts with the same bucket of interviews.
People, sure.
So you start with registered voters, and we want to know if you're undecided, well, who are you leaning towards at this time? It tells us a little bit more. It's more informative. But clearly what we want to know, we're 5 weeks away roughly from Election Day, who are the people who are probably going to show up and vote? Because the electorate, if you include everybody, is 2-to-1 Democratic. But that's not what it's going to be on Election Day. It's going to be a 10, 12, 14-point spread among the parties. It's not going to be this 2-to-1 factor. That's why you need to look at likely voters at this point.
Well, and also doesn't change the results terribly much either.
Well, the difference among registered was 26 points.
Right.
So it went from registered to likely. It went from 26 to 19.
Okay.
And then Lazio, if he was not in the race, who knows, it would have been maybe a little bit closer than that. I don't think you would have gotten down to the 6 percentage points that Quinnipiac had in any case. I mean, I think that one probably understated the margin, and I suspect Siena numbers overstated it.
Well, Tony Fabrizio is polling for Carl Palladino, and Carl told me last night that he thinks his internals are somewhere between 9 and 10 points spread. Does that sound realistic to you?
Well, a little bit lower, but realistic given that's a campaign poll. I mean, they're not going to tell you something.
Probably not.
That's about as reasonable. I mean, I assume you're going to hear for the internals are about as reasonable as they can peddle with, and saying this is sure competitive.
But that's a race. 19 isn't a race even.
All right, but 52. That's right, 52. What does 52 to 33? Our numbers, the likely numbers show. Well, it's a lead. It's not close, but it's competitive.
Right.
When you have a guy like Andrew Cuomo and he's at 52%, that's just barely above 50. And if you put in the Lazio numbers or take them out, well, things start to get a little dicey at some point. He is certainly, Andrew Cuomo has not closed the sale by any means.
And also, interestingly, the enthusiasm
Yes.
factor is on the Republican side,
Absolutely.
which is has to make the Democrats nervous.
That's got to be a look. This is what's going on nationwide, and New York is not immune from that. Clearly, in New York, there's so many more Democrats than Republicans. The Democrats can give up some points, but 51% of voters in New York State tell us they're very interested, very enthusiastic, I should say, about voting in November. 51%, only 34% of Democrats. That's why when we go to likely voters, the gap in the parties narrows, and that's why Cuomo's ahead by 19, not 26.
Well,
as
and
it is
also,
when you look at everybody.
You're seeing Cuomo's approval rating drop. And is that because he's getting more exposure, relatively speaking, or because people just are getting closer to the election? He's gone from 64 to 56. That's a pretty big drop.
That's right, and mostly among Republicans and independents. We're in a campaign mode right now, so you can't isolate out his job as Attorney General from the fact that he's now a Democrat candidate for governor. And I think that's what happens. It becomes more partisan, and the closer you get to Election Day, it's not surprising that his numbers might, in terms of his approval rating, drop. What's interesting is that Barack Obama, the president, is now in New York below 50%.
Yep.
Again, this is part of the national trend. This is not clearly a great year for Democrats, and although there's so many more Democrats than Republicans in New York, it's going to be shifted like it is elsewhere nationwide.
When are you back in the field?
Probably a couple weeks. We have some Senate numbers, the Gillibrand Senate and the Schumer Senate numbers, which will come out in the beginning of next week. And then I think people have had enough of numbers and polls
Just
for 1 week.
Just for this week, we've got poll fatigue. I'm so sorry.
Yes. It's the Polstergeist week.
Polstergeist. Oh, my goodness. All right. Thank you very much, Lee Miringoff from Marist. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Liz.